Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be talking about possible tipping point states. So first, I just want to point out that I actually made a post talking on Twitter talking about 5 bold predictions for the 2020 election. Now, I was planning on mentioning a tipping point state, but Twitter was kind enough to restrict me to only 200 characters, so, I had to limit it. But this is my prediction, so we're going to start filling out our safe states, and again, these are the tipping point states according to my prediction, so that could change by the elections if something unforeseen happens, but according to my prediction, these could be the possible tipping point states. We're also going to open the JHK forecast really quickly, because they have a great simulator. Shout out to the JHK forecast. I don't know how I could live without that. But they have a great simulator. So we're going to use that in 1 second. But we're going to start by filling out our safe states. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, I'm going to take a second to explain what a tipping point state is. A tipping point state is a state that reflects the national popular vote average. So, for example, in 2016, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by 2.1%. The closest state to that 2.1% Clinton margin was Nevada, which she won by 2.4%. So Nevada in 2016 was the tipping point state. So tipping point states aren't always the closest states. They're just the states that reflect the country in terms of how they vote, if that makes sense. So, yeah. I don't know why I hadn't characterized Alabama as safe. So those are our safe states. So these states really, we know Hillary Clinton lost Wyoming by 45% in 2016, and Biden's going to probably do the same. So we know that Wyoming will not be the tipping point state, nor will California. So now we're going to fill out the likely states. These have an outside chance of being tipping point states. It's possible that if Biden does win the election by enough, that these could be tipping points, but again, I don't expect them to be. The one state that I'm going to fill out here that actually has a chance of being a tipping point state is the state of Michigan, or excuse me, the state of Minnesota, which we're going to get into in 1 second. So, Alaska, Texas, South Carolina, Indiana, Missouri should all be likely. So, yeah, these states have an outside chance, but we're going to label Michigan I keep saying Michigan, Minnesota as a possible tipping point. So, Minnesota, in 2016, we're going to pull up the 2016 presidential election. Minnesota, we're going to click on Minnesota right here. That went to Hillary Clinton by around 1.5%, if I recall correctly. So Minnesota, she ended up winning Minnesota, by basically a little more than that. Or actually, exactly that. So, Minnesota, I think, is going to... Hillary Clinton was a bad candidate for the Rust Belt. Again, she didn't really campaign there. She thought Minnesota was a safe state for her. It ended up being a tilt state, so she got lucky that she won there. But, I do think Biden's going to win it by more like 6%, 5 to 7%, somewhere in that arena. And I think that if he wins the popular vote by that margin, that could be a tipping point state. So that's a possible tipping point. Another possible tipping point is this next door neighbor of Wisconsin. And Wisconsin, now in 2016, it was far from a tipping point. It voted around 3 points to the right of the country. But this time around, it is expected to swing the left. Joe Biden is the favorite to win here. According to the JHK forecast, Joe Biden has an 87% chance of winning in the state of Wisconsin and is currently ahead there, or in the popular vote by 7%. So let's say he wins the popular vote by 7%. Then according to the JHK forecast, Wisconsin would be the tipping point state. But I think he'll win it by less. I think he'll win it by something like 5.5% or 6%. So I do think that Wisconsin will be a lean state, not a likely state, so I think Wisconsin will still vote to the right of the country, but it's still in that realm of possibility where I could see it happening. So Wisconsin and Minnesota both, although I think Minnesota will vote barely to the left of the country and Wisconsin will vote barely to the right of the country. Now we're going to move on to the state of Nevada. And again, to clarify, this is just a scenario where Biden wins. If Trump wins, a possible tipping point state might be the state of Ohio or something, or maybe not Ohio. He'd probably win Pennsylvania if he wins the election in Pennsylvania. Be the tipping point state for him, maybe. So Nevada actually was the tipping point state in 2016. So that's basically all I need to say about it. It was close in 2016. It's going to be pretty close again. But this is assuming that Trump does a little better in Nevada than we think, or Biden does well in Nevada and does well in the election. So I think he's going to win Nevada by 4.5 to 4.7%, somewhere in that ballpark. And I think he's going to win the election by a little more than that. So interestingly enough, I have Nevada voting to the right of the country. So now we're going to add another tipping point. That's the state of Arizona. And then we're going to fill out the rest of these states. Now, Arizona, I do think it will vote too, and I said this a lot, to the right of the country. However, we've seen a lot of good news to the Democrats in this state. You know, they were able to win a 2018 Senate race there, even though they weren't the favorite, and really just have been making up a lot of ground in Arizona. You know, they're losing ground in Minnesota or Wisconsin, but they're gaining ground in Arizona, Texas, and Nevada. So, yeah, but let's just say Biden wins the popular vote by a little less than we expect, maybe 4%, and he wins Arizona by 4%, which is both those scenarios are very reasonable. Arizona would be the tipping point state. So now we're going to just fill out the states that don't really have a chance of being the tipping point state. Ohio, Iowa, Georgia will not be the tipping point state. And I do think that in the scenario Biden wins North Carolina, don't think that will be the tipping point state. And Florida, we're not going to touch just yet. And then Trump, I think, will win in Maine, second congressional district. So the rest of these states have a decent chance of being the tipping point state. We're going to leave the best for last. First, we're going to characterize Nebraska's second district, which I characterize as a lean Democratic state, or district in this case. I do think that Nebraska 02 will vote to the right of the country by a decent amount. I think Biden is going to win it by like 2 to 3%. He's going to win the popular vote by a lot more than that. We're thinking 5 to 6%, but we're just going to list it because it's still in the same ballpark. And that if he does run up the score in this district and he does win the election by the amount that I'm projecting him to, then in that case, it should be considered. Now, New Hampshire is another one. Whoops, wrong button. New Hampshire is another one that I could see being a tipping point state, mostly because it was pretty close in 2016. But I expect New Hampshire to actually vote to the right of the country, kind of like Nebraska's second district. So we've got 2 states left, Pennsylvania and Florida, both critical states. But we're going to give Florida to Biden by a tilt margin, and Pennsylvania is my pick for the tipping state. That's my prediction, ladies and gentlemen. So we'll come back to Pennsylvania. I do think will be the tipping point state because I think Biden's going to win Pennsylvania by just under 5%. Actually, you know, I think I'll have to update my prediction, but I think I haven't ran my model yet, but I think it could be up to over 5%, which would put it in that likely category. That Pennsylvania is a likely Biden state. So Pennsylvania, likely Democratic. Biden win the election by 5.5%. Let's say that's essentially the same ballpark. You have Pennsylvania and the country voting right next to each other. Pennsylvania would be the tipping point state. So that's essentially it. We're going to go over the JHK forecast now and run the simulator. And we're going to simulate the election a few times. This is the first simulation. I don't like that. We're going to try to simulate the 334 to 204 prediction that belongs to me. So we're just going to keep running it until we get something close to that. Okay, 335 is close enough for me. I think they just gave the second district, but the tipping point state in this case is Michigan, actually. But we're going to try again. New simulation, 334. We're going to see if we can get there. 344 is kind of close. Pennsylvania was the tipping point state on that one. We're just going to keep going, and hopefully we can find it. I found it easily when I did a practice rehearsal for this video. 334. Of course, it doesn't show up when I do the actual 335 again. Michigan, the tipping point. We're just gonna keep running it and keep going. Okay, I'm gonna have to pause the recording until we get to 334. All right, guys. I don't think that I'm gonna be able to find it, so we're just gonna wrap up this video and see if we can pull a Hail Mary. So, again, guys, thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Turn on post notifications. Follow my Twitter, which I showed at the beginning of this video. So again, this is the final map. Thank you all. And comment what you think. Be sure to like the video. I'll see you all in the next one.